Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with New York City-based jazz trombonist Eric Goletz on the 2023 CD Standard-Ized. Eric has been quite busy since the pandemic began. This is his third album in 3 years, and there is plenty to like on Standard-Ized. Group size and makeup are seldom the same. His charts always go into new realms. There are special guests, and on this release, he has a 6-piece string orchestra along with the great saxophonist Don Braden. Eric is full of bravado and excitement for this album, live shows, and the future. Dig it.
Joe, I'm good, man. How you doing?
I'm wonderful. Great to hear from you again, man.
Yeah, likewise, man. It's been a while. How's everything going with you?
Everything's good. Yeah, it's just been kind of a goofy couple of years on planet Earth, but other than that, it's all good.
Man, isn't that the truth? You know, it's like there was a time warp that it seems like we all went through, you know?
Yeah, and it's weird because now, like, everybody's timeline's skewed. Like, you ask somebody, hey, you remember that? And you're like, well, hold on. Let me think about it because everything's just been reshuffled. So, but it's so good to see the cats like you and the jazz communities waking up. Music's coming out. I love the brand new album. And typically, I wait until I talk to the musician to play it, but I was so into Standard-Ized, I already put it on the show. So I'm so happy to talk to you about it.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'm very honored. Thank you, man. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. So before we get into Standard-Ized, since we kind of touched on COVID and what's been going on, and it really swept through the musician community almost like a tornado, talk to me a little bit about how you survived that time period and how it's changed the way that you do things now.
First and foremost, probably, and I think most people, especially musicians, went through this, is, you know, when everything hit, I mean, everybody found themselves with absolutely nothing to do. You know, there were, you know, in terms of like the workforce, you know, people who worked in offices, you know, started working out of their homes and started doing that kind of thing. But, you know, with musicians, when it hit, I mean, there were no gigs. So, you know, we were all sitting home practicing. So it was, you know, it was quite a shock to try to, you know, figure out what what's going to happen. And I think from my own perspective, I found the thing that I think that I didn't realize I was missing, you know, in my busy life before COVID was time. You know, time to like really sit and you know, analyze and kind of evaluate and reevaluate things that, you know, were going on. And it was actually, it may sound kind of strange to say, but, you know, in a way it's because COVID hit and I was able to finally really like evaluate what I was doing. I was able to actually focus on starting to record my own, you know, my own material, my own, you know, and really put a band together that was for that, rather than just, you know, doing the in the trenches gigs, which is what we've all done for so many years. You know, whatever the gig is, that's where it is, you know, and you know, I'd been wanting to really focus on you know, myself as not just a trombonist but as a composer and an arranger. And you know, when COVID hit, I was able to organize my time so that I really could focus on that because there wasn't a lot else going on. And so I found throughout how negative so many things were at that period of time, I felt like for me I was trying to turn that, you know, that into a positive for myself in terms of what I was doing from an artistic standpoint and from a career standpoint. And I felt like I was able to, I kind of felt like I caught a little fire there, you know, because the first year of COVID is when I put out my first album, and then I've, you know, done, you know, one a year since. And it's, you know, I felt like I've built on the momentum one, you know, after the next, and it certainly creatively, because I started becoming, you know, because I really started focusing on it, I started having more ideas that I could write down at any given time. So it was, it's, you know, for me now it's turned into, you know, quite the positive thing in that I've been creatively able to do things that I've wanted to do for 30 years that I've never done, either because I've never really either been able to focus on it completely or had the time or had the money or any of that. And so it really kind of in the last 2 to 3 years, really all those things seem to come together. So I'm feel like I'm especially with this new album, I feel like I'm on a wave that's starting to feel like at least it's starting to get some momentum. I mean, the last album got some really good airplay and got great reviews, and I'm just hoping that Standard-Ized, which is a different concept for me, I'm hoping that it creates its own momentum too.
I have no doubt it will. It's such a rich, dense listen. And I'm curious, the personnel, Don Braden, there's a lot of names that are on this album. How did you go about not only picking the personnel for this recording, but how did you go about picking the songs? It just all comes together really well.
Well, I mean, the musicians, the core group of musicians on this album are my guys. I mean, we, that have done, that have been with me, and I've, but even before the albums, like Steve Johns, his legendary New York drummer. I've been working with Steve for many, many years, and certainly, he was, going to be a part of this, as was Jim Riddle. Jim and I go back. Jim and I went to college together. In fact, Jim and I, we've known each other for 40 years. When we were in college, Jim had his wedding. He got married to Kathy, and I was one of the ushers in his wedding. I mean, we go back that far. Wow. So Jim and I reconnected a few years ago. We had gone, we had been in the business and working with people and doing stuff, and we hadn't worked together in so long, and it just came together that we reconnected, and it's been great. So he obviously was a great choice for this album. And Brian Glassman, great bass player. These are guys that I've worked with, for in many different situations and for a long time. And I was thinking, with my previous album, Randy Brecker was the guest, and I knew I wanted to do something on this album. I knew I wanted to have a guest, but I knew it probably wasn't going to be a trumpet player, because I just did that, with Randy. And at first, I was thinking my first idea was I was going to get another trombonist and do like a 2 trombone thing. And I just kind of go with what I start hearing and hearing musically. And nothing was really striking me with that. And I was thinking more about it, and I was thinking, I think a sax, especially I love the sound of soprano and trombone, because, the textures of the instruments are completely different, as are the tessituras, and they complement each other so well. And I know that, over the years when I've had the chance to work with a soprano sax player, I've just always found it to be such a great combination with trombone and soprano. And so I started thinking that, and then I started hearing it. And as soon as I started hearing it, and then pencil goes to paper, I'm like, okay, this has got to be it. And it was just around this time I was talking to Steve, the drummer, Steve Johns, and Steve was like, and I was saying, Steve, I'm thinking a sax player would be great. And he said, oh man, Don Braden is the guy. And it's funny because I was thinking about Don Braden while never meeting Don. I certainly have been familiar with his playing for many, many years, and have always enjoyed listening to him play. And as it turns out, Steve knows Don really well, and so Steve put us in contact with each other, and it worked out great. Don and I just hit it off immediately, both personally and musically, and the first rehearsal that he came to that we met, Don and I are, we're both into fitness, and we're both into all of this kind of stuff, and we're exchanging ideas and philosophies, and then when we were playing together musically, it's just like we clicked, and it was just great. And in the studio, when we recorded, and there was just like this chemistry and this energy with me and Don that I felt, and then playing off the band, and that recording session for this album was just. What a phenomenally positive, fun experience that was. We just played, and I think that of the 14 tunes on that album, I think probably 7 of them were first takes, maybe 8 of them. I don't remember. It was a lot. Wow. It's just like we hit it, and I've never been one when I go into the studio to like beat it to death, doing take after take after take. And I'm not criticizing you guys who do, because there's a lot of guys that feel you got to do that. But for me, I think the spontaneous energy when you're in the studio, and you especially like that energy you get on the first take or the first couple of takes. To me, once you start going beyond that, you start losing that spontaneity. You start losing that energy, and I don't like to do it. I mean, generally when I'm in the studio, if I can't get something in 3 takes, I'm going to leave it. Maybe we'll come back to it, the next day. But for that day, it's done. Because I don't want to get bogged down with having to take so many takes, because at what point, it's like, what is the point? Maybe the rhythm section maybe was a little tighter on this one. Maybe, the solos were a little better on this one. But I mean, you start to nitpick, and then for me, I think that loses perspective. And I just know that I've been in so many sessions at different points where I just looking at my watch, and I can't wait to get out of there because I just don't want to play this particular tune another time. So I just in my approach when I go in with my band, I want to hit it. I want to hit it hard, and I want to capture that energy. And that's why, when I go into the studio with the band, I go in really well rehearsed, well prepared, so that all of that stuff is out of the way, and we can get right to playing the music and not trying to figure out charts. And I understand because of logistics, when recording albums, there's not always a lot of rehearsal time. So some certain things may have to be worked out in the studio, but I'd like to go in with rehearsed and prepared and be able to get right to the energy. And so I feel that we accomplished that with this album. We didn't over rehearse it, and I think in my arrangements for it, I try to keep them less complex and more just about the energy and the interaction from soloist to soloist, and I think that it really, I feel like we captured it, and I feel like that energy of like how Don and I played off each other, and how the band played off of him and me, and the whole thing was it was absolutely great. And of course, then once with the we got the whole thing solidified with him, then I started thinking too, like these two Michel Legrand tunes, and I was thinking, it would really be great to have a vocal tune on the album, maybe two, just as a different color. And because so far on the album we have things that are just a trio, we have things that are a quartet. There's certain things that are just me and rhythm section, and then there's things with me and Don, and then so the group kind of varies in size, even though it's all the same group. It's just that the arrangements kind of give different tastes and different textures throughout the album. There's like always something different each tune. It's not like it's 7 pieces for 14 tunes. It's always broken up. And I thought that vocal color, especially since I hadn't done that in any of my previous recordings, would be something that I would like to do. And the first tune that hit my mind was Nature Boy, because I've just always loved that tune. It's always been something to the tune that is always kind of have a haunting melody, and there's a real message there, lyrically, when you really take time to listen to it, and especially when you consider the guy who composed it, Eden Abez, and his whole, where he came from, and his whole background. I just thought that's a tune I wanted to do, and my first thought was I don't want to do it instrumentally. I want to do it vocally. And LaJuan Carter, who is the vocalist on the album, is she has sung with everybody and been around and played with everybody, and I've known LaJuan for 30 years. We've done so many gigs together in so many different situations, and when I started thinking about vocalists for the album, she was my first. She was my first thought, my first choice, because I've always enjoyed performing with her. I've always enjoyed listening to her interpret songs and her color in terms of what she does vocally. And so, so once I put that piece into place with getting to the 2 vocal tunes on the album, and then the tunes with Don, and then the rest of the tunes in terms of how it's spread out from quartet to trio to quintet to all of that, I felt it had, it had a really nice broad range of dynamic as a whole, from beginning to end. So I'm just super thrilled with how it's come out. I'm super thrilled with some of the responses I'm getting from it, and I'm honored that you've already played it on your show. I mean, come on, man, it's not even out yet.
Yeah. Well, and that gives me a great backdrop. I mean, even from the real genuine improv first take kind of feel, I feel that burst of energy that's in it. But the other part of your life is live shows. Have you noticed that the crowds are different now that live music is picking up? And also, are you going to pick up live shows more with this new album and showcase it for people?
Oh, I definitely am. That's definitely in the plan. Because I feel like now, especially with live shows, I think there's an appreciation for them that not that people didn't have before, but and I don't even want to use the word complacent, but I think that because it was just so much part of what was there, people kind of maybe took it for granted a little bit. And I think that now that it's coming back, I feel that people realize the value of it. Especially that we can, go out now and while I guess the virus and all whatever stuff is never going to be completely gone, at least we can pretty much say the pandemic is in the rearview mirror and people aren't as afraid now, of being in social situations. But certainly I think that in live music situations, I think there's maybe a greater appreciation for what's going on there, and I think that not just from the audience perspective, but from the musician's perspective. I mean, I know myself, it's almost like now a gift to be able to play in front of people live, and really how really important it is, really important from a cultural standpoint, from an artistic standpoint, and in a crazy world that we live in with so many crazy things going on and so many negative things, that music is the one language that transcends all of them, because it's about people coming together and enjoying the culture of humanity, and there doesn't have to be politics involved in that. There doesn't have to be things involved in that other than the appreciation of the fact that this is music, and music is what is kind of, it has woven through the thread of humanity since the beginning of time. And I think that for me, I mean, I not that I ignore what's going on in the world. I try not to let it, get me down, because it can be very negative. And I just find that through the music, I never discuss that kind of thing, because I don't want to discuss it. I want to put my energy toward what's positive in the world. And for me, what's positive in the world is being able to play music, being able to write music, being able to do it for people, have people enjoying it, and have our culture as a whole appreciate the fact that music and art and all those things are happening from the love of humanity, and from the fact that part of perpetuating humanity is perpetuating its culture. A humanity without culture is dead. It can't exist. So I think from that perspective, we're, at least I know in my mind, that the thought of going out there, especially with this band, getting this album out and playing live with this is, I think I've never been more excited, man. I've been in this business a long time. I've been playing the trombone a long time, and I feel just like excited, like a teenage kid, playing with the jazz band for the first concert.
And it shows, it exudes so well. So I'm curious, for anybody out there that wants to pick up the album, stream it, see you live, where can they get all this information and get it all figured out so they can do that?
Go to my website, ericgoletz.com. You can go to the website. You can also go to the Cap Records website at jazzbeat.com. And have information. You can certainly, you'll be able to download it, or you can buy physical copies of the CD from the CAP website. And when I have information about when we're going to be playing, where we're going to be playing, that will be on my website. And in terms of, once it releases next Friday, the 10th, it'll be available on all the platforms, Spotify, Amazon, iTunes. So it will be available for downloading and streaming through the CAP website, so it'll be readily available. You won't have to look hard for it.
And Eric, your exuberance for the music is always so refreshing and great to hear. It's great to catch up with you. Good luck with the album, and I'm sure we'll speak down the line, because this is coming out. These albums are coming out at a regular clip.
Well, thank you, Joe. It's an honor for me to be on your show and talk to you, and I'm so happy to share it with you. And I really enjoy getting your feedback on it. And as always, it's a pleasure to spend a little time with you, and I do look forward to it again, man.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in New York, Kansas City, and spots all over the globe, giving fans all that jazz. Thanks to Eric for his time, enthusiasm, and stories. If you want to hear more interviews, visit Neon Jazz Interviews at either Spotify or Apple Podcasts. You can also find us on YouTube, or you can visit us at the home of Neon Jazz at theneonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.